Hard City is a highly cinematic game. It is inspired by action and sci-fi movies of the 1980s, and it looks like a B-movie in terms of taste, I would say, and flavor, but also like a B-movie with a big budget, because you will see crazy action, a lot of mutants, the kind of stuff that you couldn't always do in movies with low budgets there. So we're in Hard City, where we have a team of heroic officers that are going to fight against Dr. Zero, the crazy scientist, and the army of mutants that Dr. Zero is unleashing on the city, trying to achieve different kinds of evil goals. The game has 5 scenarios. Each scenario has multiple configurations at the beginning of the game, so you have increased replay value. Here I set up the board to show you one of the possible initial configurations for the first scenario. Also, the game can be played cooperative or competitive. If you play competitive, one player will control Dr. Zero and his mutants, and the other side will control the police officers. Otherwise, you can play solitaire or cooperative by using an AI that will manage the actions of Dr. Zero and the mutants. Our 4 police officers, their stats, their abilities are indicated on these cards here. And as you can see, each of our heroic police officers has a health track. When that goes down to 0, the officer is temporarily dead, but then they'll come back and Dr. Zero scores a point. Also, they have a starting ability and they have action points. The officers will spend actions, and you will use these tokens to keep track of how many action points you spent to perform different kind of actions. Then, of course, each officer is also represented on the board by a miniature, and it's kind of cool. In some of the scenarios, the part of the setup basically is that the car will just come in, crashing mutants on the way, and then they will come out and they will start kicking butt and do crazy fun stuff. So that's cool. As for the flow of the game, generally speaking, you will first have an officer goes, and the players controlling the officers decide who that is. Suppose we're gonna activate her, and then oh no, you stepped on a civilian. Come on, that's rude. How are you serving and protecting the way? So first, the officers take a turn by activating one of their characters, spending all action points that they want to spend. Then Dr. Zero takes a turn, then another officer activates and takes a turn, then Dr. Zero takes a turn, and so on and so forth. And so it's a nice constant back and forth there. When taking an action, these are the things that the officers can do, and these are the numbers of movement points that they will cost. For a movement point, an officer can move 1 or 2 spaces, including diagonally. That's sometimes unusual. You can just move diagonally like it's nothing. For an action point, you can perform a shooting attack in an area other than yours, and only into an area that does not have civilians, that does not have other officers. Now, it just so happens the character I'm activating, her ability is that she's such a sharpshooter, then she can shoot in an area with other people without endangering them, but usually you can't do that. When you're performing a shooting attack, you roll 2 dice. These 2 dice, what we got here is 2 blank sides, 2 sides with a single bullet hole, a side with 2, and a side like, whoa! I don't know how to describe that. So, you roll the dice. If you roll a single bullet hole, that simply stuns the mutant that you are shooting at. 2 bullet holes will remove an unstunned mutant, or if a mutant has already been stunned, then a single bullet hole is enough to remove them. So that's pretty much an idea. As for this symbol here, when you roll it, you can choose to spend an action point, if you still have one, to treat that one as if it was a bullet hole. As for close combat, and I'm gonna send this guy because he's good in close combat. As for close combat, you roll a single die, and you can only stun them. Just pummeling them and pummeling them, pounding them does not kill them. You need to use range combat, but at least once they're stunned, then they do not block you, because we're talking about movement. If you move out of an area with mutants, then you'll take damage. So for close combat, a lot less powerful. A single die, and you can't kill them any otherwise. Oh, we're talking about shooting also. Suppose you're not a sharpshooter, so instead of spending an action point and rolling dice, you can spend 2 action points, perform an aimed shot, and in which case you automatically remove a target. And so you can choose how important it is, how much you want to risk. If you want to roll for a single point and then maybe roll twice because you save that point, or do differently. You will collect equipment as you go around the board. As you start opening boxes, you will collect equipment cards such as these, for example, or this one, the VHS tape. Told you that it's old school, or skateboard and basketball. So you will collect that, and that's pretty good. But if you're in the same space with a colleague, then you can trade equipment. Using equipment also costs an action, and then using skills, depending on what they are, also may cost actions. There are also free actions, though, the most important of which is possibly to move civilians. If you're in a space with a civilian and you move out of that space, a civilian follows you for free. Many objectives of the scenarios have to do with rescuing civilians. Also, if you are in an area with a box, for free, you can open the box and draw cards from the corresponding, which can be a box, maybe a police crate. And so that's how that works. So great flexibility there in the way the officers move, attack, rescue civilians, open boxes, trade equipment, and so on and so forth. When it comes to Dr. Zero, their actions are card driven. So you're gonna have a deck of cards, and at the beginning of Dr. Zero's turn, if they have an instant card, they can just play like that for free and resolve the action indicated there. They also have reaction cards that they can play during the officer's turn whenever the text allows it and the trigger is triggered, I guess. And then during their turn, they can, after playing an instant card, if they have one and they so desire, then Dr. Zero can play an action card for its action, in which case you simply resolve the text indicated there. Otherwise, Dr. Zero, as their main action, can play any card for the icons indicated at the bottom, and they can choose to perform any 2 of these 3. The actions are spawning, which allows you to place more new units on the board, new mutants on the board, and you see the number there. Moving, that's the number of mutants that can move 1 or 2 spaces. And attacking, that's the number of mutants that can attack officers or civilians in their space. And when the mutants attack, that's an automatic hit. They don't need to roll. If they are attacking a space that contains both multiple targets, so maybe multiple officers and civilians, then the officers decide how to assign that. Most likely the officers will want to assign that hit to a cop to protect the civilian, and also again the cops may take several hits before they go down, because a civilian found alone by a mutant will go down for a single attack. And so, since Dr. Zero can use any 2 of these actions, basic actions, then there's great flexibility there, because it can be that they are spawning and moving. you know what, I need to spawn, then I'm going to move and attack. I'm going to spawn and maybe already have some mutants in the correct position to attack, so I'm going to spawn and attack. So great flexibility there. So that's the general idea, that the actions for Dr. Zero are card driven, so there's a little more randomness there. But there's also, that's also how, you know, between the instant cards and the reactions, then there can be some interesting surprises that the Doctor can spring on our officers. Also, instead of doing those things, the Doctor can choose to draw a card from their deck, and also they will get new cards at the beginning of the turn. I haven't mentioned victory conditions yet because they're also very easy to talk about and not so easy, because first team to score 7 points wins the game. However, what that means depends on the scenarios, because different scenarios will give you different ways of scoring points. Rescuing civilians and bringing them on the helicopter, for example, may be one way. Rescuing them from different situations, preventing the mutants from stealing toxic goo that, you know, will turn turtles into fighters, that kind of stuff. So different scenarios will have different things. There will be also different kind of zombies. So soldier zombies can shoot, for example. No zombies, of course. As a soldier, mutant soldiers can shoot. Mutated rats and move faster than normal. And speaking about victory points, you have this big ugly here. That's the name. And Dr. Zero can bring this big mutant into the game once per game. As you can see, this one is a lot more resistant. And the beauty is that it has a number of hearts, so of life points, equal to the officer's victory points. So this is better if for Dr. Zero if brought in later in the game to try to even the field, and so it really functions very elegantly, very organically as the final villain or as the big boss of the situation. In essence, this is how you play Heart City. This is my general overview of gameplay. I have seen people describing Heart City as a Zombicide light, but I'm old enough that I remember another game that to me is closer to Heart City. In my days, Zombicide light was called Last Night on Earth, which of course precedes Zombicide. But that's the closest analogy to me. This almost feels like a new version, re-implemented version with different mechanics, but overall it's a very similar flow and feel, and that's fine, and that's okay. First, because, you know, Last Night on Earth hasn't been around for a while. I don't think they have new releases, and from time to time playing a game of that kind with the randomness, with light strategy, but still with interesting decisions, and here with an interesting action point system, interesting interactions. That's just what you want. Sometimes that's just the idea. And again, it really brought back those game nights back in 2008, 2009, playing that game, which was messy and light and crazy. It was all about the action. And here's what we got here. We have that kind of intense confrontation. The game is very cinematic, and you know that that's by design, to the point that there is even a system here of special effects that are called cutscenes, and they come out of a card deck, and they're placed in order from left to right, and you have to, if you want to gain those advantages as the officers, you have to complete them in order, because you can't just rewind movies, you cannot go back. At least if you were in a movie theater in the 1980s. These days, all the sorcery of technology. But there's a strong cinematic feel in so many elements here from the cards that don't just tell you the name of the character, but tell you the name of the character, of the actor basically playing that role. Or, you know, this character has the surgeon, this character has himself. All of these little elements that are just fun. But again, the number of mutants, that's a big budget movie. So if you're looking for a game that is all about the action rather than maybe about the subtleties, then this is it. This is a game that gives you the kind of like fun, light experience. And again, when you have action points, you still have an element of agency, which is not nothing. It's pretty is pretty relevant here, because you can still strategize, you can still coordinate actions. Oh, I'm gonna come there and punch that mutant in the face, so that then you from that space can move away and do something else, and you, the sharpshooter, are gonna shoot into that crowd of civilian and mutants before something bad happens. Then somebody else comes in and picks up the civilians. And from scenario to scenario, you really have very different situations. The later scenarios become a lot more elaborate in terms of rules and how the space works, and maybe you go down the sewers, and maybe you have to do different things. I realize now I don't want to talk too much about those, because maybe you want to experience them as a narrative, and so I don't want to give you spoilers. But there is a sense of progression, so you don't have the sense that each scenario is just shoot and move, shoot and move. There are very different objectives there. And the two sides play quite differently. Again, as the overlord of evil, as Dr. Zero, you have different things that you can do. It's fun to throw a reaction that they don't expect. Maybe some of those cards are particularly powerful, but I would say once the players are familiar with the general idea, like, oh, if we do this, if we end our turn that way, or if we don't want to create a situation then the opponent may exploit. Again, I want to give you details, but there was a case where, like, it's okay to leave a lot of stunned zombies, mutants stunned on the board. They are not going to attack us right now until a card is played, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So maybe the first couple of times that you play, that's going to be super fun in one way, which is going to be discover the plot twist, which is good in a movie, and later it becomes more strategic. But the game overall has to me a really nice balance between sheer cinematic, over-the-top, action-oriented, I was going to say silly fun, but in a way that it's not derogatory in any way, just pure fun, and yet, again, strategies and decisions there. With different scenarios, each can be set up in different ways. You're going to have a lot of variety there. Again, at the beginning, I was a little bit worried it's going to be just move and shoot, but then different things happen to the cards, the events, the scenarios that bring a lot more variety than I expected originally. So, I'm very pleased, because, again, it's just fun. Again, it's a game of this kind, not for every group, not for every game night even, but with the right group, in the right spirit, then this can be a lot of fun. If you love Last Night on Earth back in the day when we were younger, this will bring back those memories and that feel and that flow. And if you like Zombicide and you want a lighter version, I believe that the Zombicide light definition also applies here. Either way, Horror City is a fun, light game.